In this video, we shared a country that is one of the most gorgeous countries on Earth, and even with its modest size, it packs a lot of history, culture, and attractions for us to experience. This country is known for its stunning national parks, dynamic Maori culture, incredible hiking trails, and world-class skiing and surfing, so keep watching until the end. Hello. Hope you're doing well. In this video, we are going to share about all the features of New Zealand, history, language and dialect, weather conditions and 5 countries that have the most trade relations with New Zealand. If you are interested in this kind of content, please subscribe to Farman's Life channel, and by pressing the bell on the side, you will be notified as soon as the next video is released. We're very glad that you are with us in this video. New Zealand is an island country in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. It consists of 2 main land masses, the North Island and the South Island, and over 700 smaller islands. It is the 6th largest island country by area, covering 268,021 square kilometers. New Zealand is about 2,000 kilometers east of Australia across the Tasman Sea and 1,000 kilometers south of the islands of New Caledonia, Fiji, and Tonga. The country's varied topography and sharp mountain peaks, including the Southern Alps, owe much to tectonic uplift and volcanic eruptions. New Zealand's capital city is Wellington, and its most populous city is Auckland. The islands of New Zealand were the last large habitable lands to be settled by humans. Between about 1280 and 1350, Polynesians began to settle in the islands and then developed a distinctive Maori culture. In 1642, the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman became the first European to sight and record New Zealand. In 1840, representatives of the United Kingdom and Maori chiefs signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which in its English version declared British sovereignty over the islands. It gained full statutory independence in 1947, retaining the monarch as head of state. Today, the majority of New Zealand's population of 5.1 million is of European descent. The indigenous Maori are the largest minority, followed by Asians and Pacific Islanders. Reflecting this, New Zealand's culture is mainly derived from Maori and early British settlers, with recent broadening of culture arising from increased immigration. The official languages are English, Maori, and New Zealand Sign Language, with the local dialect of English being dominant. A developed country, New Zealand ranks highly in international comparisons of national performance, such as quality of life, education, protection of civil liberties, government transparency, and economic freedom. The country was the first to introduce a minimum wage, and the first to give women the right to vote. New Zealand underwent major economic changes during the 1980s, which transformed it from a protectionist to a liberalized free trade economy. The service sector dominates the national economy, followed by the industrial sector and agriculture. International tourism is also a significant source of revenue. Nationally, legislative authority is vested in an elected, unicameral parliament, while executive political power is exercised by the cabinet, led by the Prime Minister, currently Chris Hipkins. King Charles III is the country's monarch and is represented by the Governor-General. New Zealand is a member of the United Nations, Commonwealth of Nations, ANZUS, UKUSA, OECD, ASEAN +6, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the Pacific Community and the Pacific Islands Forum. New Zealand is located near the center of the water hemisphere and is made up of 2 main islands and more than 700 smaller islands. The 2 main islands are separated by Cook Strait, 22 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Besides the North and South Islands, the 5 largest inhabited islands are Stewart Island, Chatham Island, Great Barrier Island, D'Urville Island and Waiheke Island. New Zealand is long and narrow. Because of its far-flung outlying islands and long coastline, the country has extensive marine resources. Its exclusive economic zone is one of the largest in the world, covering more than 15 times its land area. New Zealand, together with Australia, is part of a region known as Australasia. It also forms the southwestern extremity of the geographic and ethnographic region called Polynesia. Oceania is a wider region encompassing the Australian continent, New Zealand, and various island countries in the Pacific Ocean that are not included in the 7-continent model. New Zealand's climate is predominantly temperate maritime, with mean annual temperatures ranging from 10 degrees Celsius in the south to 16 degrees Celsius in the north. Conditions vary sharply across regions, from extremely wet on the west coast of the South Island to semi-arid in central Otago and the Mackenzie Basin of inland Canterbury and subtropical in Northland. Of the 7 largest cities, Christchurch is the driest, receiving on average only 618 millimeters of rain per year, and Wellington the wettest, receiving almost twice that amount. The general snow season is early June until early October, though cold snaps can occur outside this season. Snowfall is common in the eastern and southern parts of the South Island and mountain areas across the country. Island biogeography has influenced evolution of the country's species of animals, fungi, and plants. The giant Haast's eagle died out when humans hunted its main prey, the moa, to extinction. The arrival of humans, associated changes to habitat, and the introduction of rats, ferrets, and other mammals led to the extinction of many bird species, including large birds like the moa and Haast's eagle. New Zealand has an advanced market economy, ranked 13th in the 2021 Human Development Index, and 4th in the 2022 Index of Economic Freedom. It is a high-income economy with a nominal gross domestic product, GDP, per capita of $36,254. The currency is the New Zealand dollar, informally known as the Kiwi dollar. New Zealand's population today is concentrated to the north of the country, with around 76.5% of the population living in the North Island and 23.4% in the South Island as of June 2022. During the 20th century, New Zealand's population drifted north. New Zealand is a predominantly urban country, with 83.6% of the population living in urban areas, and 50.4% of the population living in the 7 cities with populations exceeding 100,000. Auckland, with over 1.4 million residents, is by far the largest city. New Zealand cities generally rank highly on international livability measures. For instance, in 2016, Auckland was ranked the world's 3rd most livable city and Wellington the 12th by the Mercer Quality of Living Survey. Christianity is the predominant religion in New Zealand, although its society is among the most secular in the world. In the 2018 census, 44.7% of respondents identified with one or more religions, including 37% identifying as Christians. Another 48.5% indicated that they had no religion. Most of the major sporting codes played in New Zealand have British origins. Rugby union is considered the national sport and attracts the most spectators. Golf, netball, tennis and cricket have the highest rates of adult participation, while netball, rugby union and football, soccer, are particularly popular among young people. The foundation of New Zealand's economy is the export of agricultural commodities such as dairy products, meat, forest products, fruit and vegetables, and wine. In the following, we introduce the 5 countries that have the most trade relations with New Zealand. Number 1. New Zealand and China. China is New Zealand's top trading partner, with two-way goods and services trade totaling 37.7 billion New Zealand dollars in the year ending December 2021, up 20% from year-ended December 2020 figures. Over this period, China remained New Zealand's largest market for exports, 21.4 billion New Zealand dollars, and imports, 16.3 billion New Zealand dollars. The main New Zealand export are dairy, infant formula, meat and meat products, forestry trade, services trade, fruit and seafood. New Zealand imports from China are $16.26 billion, comprising $15.45 billion in goods and $800 million in services. New Zealand's major imports from China include electronics, machinery. Number 2. New Zealand and Australia. In the year ended June 2022, trans-Tasman trade in goods was 16.4 billion New Zealand dollars. New Zealand goods exports to Australia were 8.17 billion New Zealand dollars, making up 12.1% of total goods exports. Australia is New Zealand's biggest services trade partner, and ranks number 1 for highest total trade value. In the year ended June 2022, 23.9% of all New Zealand services exports are to Australia, 3.36 billion New Zealand dollars, and services imports from Australia make up 22.6%, 5.02 billion New Zealand dollars, of all New Zealand service imports. Investment between New Zealand and Australia was almost 197 billion New Zealand dollars as at December 2019. Australia is New Zealand's second largest destination for overseas investment, 68 billion New Zealand dollars. Australian investment in New Zealand makes up 30% of total foreign investment, 129 billion New Zealand dollars. Australia is the largest source of foreign direct investment in New Zealand, at 57 billion New Zealand dollars. NZ's major goods exports to Australia, June 2022 dairy, 798.96 million New Zealand dollars, mechanical machinery, 632.58 million New Zealand dollars, beverages, 597.73 million New Zealand dollars, pearls, precious stones and metals, 576.49 million New Zealand dollars. Number 3. New Zealand and US. New Zealand is currently US' 47th largest goods trading partner with $7.4 billion in total, two-way, goods trade during 2020. Goods exports totaled $3.2 billion, goods imports totaled $4.2 billion. The U.S. goods trade deficit with New Zealand was $1.0 billion in 2020. Trade and services with New Zealand, exports and imports, totaled an estimated $3.4 billion in 2020. Services exports were $1.8 billion. Services imports were $1.5 billion. The U.S. services trade surplus with New Zealand was $332 million in 2020. According to the Department of Commerce, U.S. exports of goods and services to New Zealand supported an estimated 34,000 jobs in 2019, latest data available, 17,000 supported by goods exports and 17,000 supported by services exports. Exports. New Zealand was the United States' 47th largest goods export market in 2020. U.S. goods exports to New Zealand in 2020 were $3.2 billion, down 19%, $752 million, from 2019 but up 13% from 2010. The top export categories, two-digit HS, in 2020 were aircraft, $534 million, machinery, $386 million, special other, low-value shipments, $274 million, vehicles, $227 million, and electrical machinery, $199 million. U.S. total exports of agricultural products to New Zealand totaled $537 million in 2020. Leading domestic export categories include dairy products, $123 million, distillers grains, $60 million, pork and pork products, $39 million, fresh fruit, $36 million, and dog and cat food, $32 million. U.S. exports of services to New Zealand were an estimated $1.8 billion in 2020, 42.7%, $1.4 billion, less than 2019, but 6% less than 2010 levels. Leading services exports from the U.S. to New Zealand were in the financial services, transportation, and telecommunications, computer, and information services sectors. Imports. New Zealand was the United States' 47th largest supplier of goods imports in 2020. U.S. goods imports from New Zealand totaled $4.2 billion in 2020, up 2.3%, $95 million, from 2019, and up 52% from 2010. The top import categories, two-digit HS, in 2020 were meat, beef, $1.2 billion, beverages, wine, $501 million, dairy, eggs, honey, $329 million, special other, repairs and returns, $274 million, and machinery, $272 million. U.S. total imports of agricultural products from New Zealand totaled $2.6 billion in 2020, our 16th largest supplier of agricultural imports. Leading categories include beef and beef products, $945 million, wine and related products, $489 million, dairy products, $458 million, other meat products, $254 million, and other livestock products, $102 million. U.S. imports of services from New Zealand were an estimated $1.5 billion in 2020, 44.3%, $1.2 billion, less than 2019, but 11% greater than 2010 levels. Leading services imports from New Zealand to the U.S. were in the travel, transportation, and personal, cultural and recreational services sectors. Number 4. New Zealand and Japan. New Zealand and Japan share an intense focus in high-quality food standards. That has been a firm foundation for building complementary seasonal horticulture partnerships. Exports to New Zealand and Japan averaged 22,981 Japanese yen and 4 million from 2014 until 2022, reaching an all-time high of 43,734 Japanese yen million in June of 2022 and a record low of 9,299 Japanese yen million in May of 2020. This page includes a chart with historical data for Japan exports to New Zealand. In 2022, the top imports of Japan from New Zealand were cheese, 3.17 billion yen, other fruits, 2.81 billion yen, casein, 2.62 billion yen, wood fiberboard, 2.15 billion yen, and frozen bovine meat, 1.32 billion yen. Number 5. New Zealand and Korea. New Zealand and Korea have complementary economies and are natural trading partners. Korea is New Zealand's 5th largest export market. Two-way trade has grown more than 4 times since 1990, and the Korea-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement, KNZFTA, is expected to contribute to future growth. In 2022, the top imports of South Korea from New Zealand were aluminum articles, $21.2 million, edible products of animal origin (NES), $19.5 million, wood articles, charcoal, $17.4 million, miscellaneous edible preparations, $13.5 million, and glues, starches, albuminoid products, $7.39 million. In this video, we tried to give a brief description of all the features of New Zealand. From the generalities of this country to its natural resources, location, geographical conditions, and trade relations with other countries. Please support Farman's Life channel with your likes so that we have more enthusiasm to post more content. You can also comment your questions to us. If you like to watch and know more about this content, please subscribe to the channel, and by pressing the bell on the side, you will be notified as soon as a new video is released. Thank you for being with us.